on this Erev Rosh Hashanah class. We're going to get in a little bit of learning in the last Mishnah Berurah class before the Naya, the new year. And we're going to start with, we are in Siman Kuf Chaf Ches, chapter 128. We're on halacha number 11. So when we last left our heroes, our Kohanim had ascended the Duchan, meaning the place in front of the Aron, which is also called the Heichal, the place where the Sifrei Torah are laid to rest. Okay, and they have to wait there until they are summoned. Okay, so they're now when they are summoned, okay, then you turn them around. So there's a little bit difference between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. We said that the Ashkenazim are supposed to wait until they're called. Okay. So, so now they're going to turn their faces to face the congregation. So that's where they are now. So they were standing up at the Duchan, and they're going to turn to face everybody, and that's where we last left ourselves. Okay? So it says here that when the Kohanim begin to turn their faces towards the congregation, they make the blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvosav, Asher Kiddishanu b'kedushaso shel Aharon. You have sanctified us with the holiness of Aaron, and have commanded us to bless the people of Israel in love. Okay, so the Mishnah Berurah explains that so they have to turn the face and then say the bracha. Why is that important? The Mishnah Berurah says there was one guy amongst the Rishonim who used to say you make the bracha and then turn around. Okay? So, people who were particular to do this, here's how they do it. They start the bracha while facing the Aron, and then in the middle of the bracha they turn around. Okay, so they kind of do a little dance, spin around, they do a spin move, and then that's how they finish the bracha. Okay, and when it says they make the bracha, so it's important that there is a statement they make the blessing, meaning explained by the Mishnah Berurah here that all of them say it, and not one says and they answer amen. Everyone must say the bracha. Okay, now halacha 12. Okay, so they are going to lift their hands so that the hands are opposite their shoulders. Okay, so meaning they are going to lift them so that the hands are going over their head but opposite their shoulders. So they're lifting them and they're going up over the head. And you want to make sure that the right hand slightly above the left hand. And you extend the hands out and you separate the fingers. And you want to make 5 spaces between 2 of the fingers and 2 of the fingers. Okay? And that's going to be, okay, so between 2 fingers and 2 fingers is going to be 1 space. And between the finger and the thumb is another space. And between the thumb to the thumb is another. Okay, so that's where you're going to get 5. Okay, so you're going to have 2 on each hand and the space in the middle. That's not what he says. I'm just saying that about it. What he's saying, his words are you want spaces between the fingers. 2 fingers and 2 fingers, 1 space. A space between the 2 fingers and the thumb. Okay, and then a space between the thumbs. And you duplicate that. And you want to hold out the hands in such a way so that the hands spread out, aiming with the palms pointing towards the ground. And you want the tops of their hands opposite the heavens. Okay? So the Mishnah Berurah explains, they lift their arms. So it says, by Aaron, it says, Aaron lifted his hands on the people and blessed them. So therefore, that's why it's called Nasi Askap Yadayim. That's why you have to raise the hands, okay? And with this very verse, it says his hand. which means that it's referring to that the one it uses a singular, okay, and it's written minus one yud, so it's pronounced yadav, but written yado. Sounds like one hand, which means that it's the right hand, okay, which also teaches us that the right hand goes slightly above the left. So that Mishnah Berurah explains. Nonetheless, you have to keep the fingers together, the thumbs together. So you have to keep the thumbs together, the right and the left, so that they are not split apart, but they shouldn't be broken. Okay, so it needs to look like a little window in between the tops of the heads. Okay, because you have to have the 5 spaces. Okay, and if they do separate apart, and that space should not be considered a space at all, not an airspace at all. So if you are getting a little tired, in between each blessing, you can look up to check to make sure that they're in the right spot and get them back to the right place. So if they're like spread out and they're kind of like doing that, you kind of like go like, all right, I'm gonna fix that. All right, you want to fix it. You want to fix it. You said you split up the fingers, and it's brought down in the Midrash Tanchuma. It says that when it says in the pasuk says someone who looks down from the windows, he looks at the structure of the fingers of the Kohanim, and then it says Meitzitz min hacharakim, the one who looks up from within the different cracks. That's when they hold their hands out. So that's in the Midrash. It says that the idea is that these finger separations are an old custom that go way back, and that even in Shir HaShirim, where these psukim are from, it says all that. The Mishnah is not quoting it here. I would love to give you the exact location of them. Here, let me see if I can look it up real quick. Sorry, I'll have to look up the. I'll have to look up a different Mishnah Berurah. This one didn't bring the sources in it. Sorry. All right. And you have to make sure that you make the 5 spaces. Okay, what are the 5 spaces? So the word ha-charakim, 5 charakim, 5 cracks. Okay, and you hold out your palms, which the Mishnah Berurah explains, which is to say. So some people turn their hands the other way. They go like, ah. This is like this, right? It's not like this, like this. So that's the difference. Halacha 13. Okay, now this other blessing. Now the Kohanim say Yivarachecha. Okay, that's the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah says some say that the words Yivarachecha should be recited to them by the Shliach Tzibur first. And that is our custom in these lands, he says. Shulchan Aruch then continues, and afterwards, the person who is Shliach Tzibur tells them word for word, and they respond after him, after every single word, until they finish the first verse, and then the congregation answers Amen. Yes, that's true. And so too with the second pasuk, the same thing, and also with the third one. Okay. So, Mishnah Berurah explains, the Kohanim begin. So, Kohen Echad, one Kohen, you don't recite for him, okay? So you don't recite any of those words for him at all. I'm sorry, you recite for him those words. It's only one it has to be one person reciting for everybody else. All right, no, they're wrong. Okay, with one Kohen, where you don't call him up, you need to recite the words for him, starting with the word by Yivarachecha. Okay, so it brings down Yivarachecha. Okay, the Ramah says that, which the Ramah says that you need to recite word for word. So the Shulchan Aruch holds that you don't recite the first one because no one's going to mess that one up. Okay, but the Ramah disagrees. Okay, and so and then the Shulchan Aruch agrees. I'm sorry. Then the Mishnah. Where's it? 1 second. And the Shulchan Aruch continues that the Shliach Tzibur then continues after that. Okay, why do you have to recite it for them? Because it says Emor Lahem, that you should recite the words for them. And it's learned out from there that the Chazan, the person leading the services, needs to tell them what they need to say. Nonetheless, it's a nice thing to do. You know, that's the best way to do it. And it doesn't prevent you from fulfilling the mitzvah. Because we're going to learn later on in halacha number 25 that a shul that is everyone's kohanim, this is not going to apply. Okay? And also, when we say the shliach tzibur says the words out for them, he has to have a siddur in front of him and not to recite it without looking inside the siddur. Halacha 14. You only say the blessing in Hebrew and with standing and raising your hands and out loud. Okay, what does that mean? So these are all Torah requirements, the Mishnah explains, because all of these things are learned from verses. Okay? So first of all, Lashon HaKodesh, the Holy Tongue, Hebrew, that's what it says. Ko Tavarechu, that's how you should say this blessing, which is in this language. Now the requirement for standing, so since all the services in the Beis HaMikdash are standing, this one's no different. Okay? The blessing on raising your hands, that's because it says Aharon raised up his hands and blessed them. Okay? So you say a blessing. So yes, he said these blessings too, so actual psukim, but they also blessed them. So you say a blessing. Okay? And you say it out loud because it says, say it to them like someone who is saying something to his friend. The Gemara further makes other statements that you also have to make sure you have to be face to face. Okay, so that's how you turn around to face them. But most poskim, if not all of them, seem to imply that these things are required and ruin the mitzvah if not done. And if you don't do all these things, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah of the Berachas Kohanim, the Siyas Kapayim. So, if you aren't able to do it correctly, you should leave the shul and not join in with the other Kohanim. So if you can't say it in Hebrew, you can't do this, you can't do that, walk out at Ritzay. Okay, now let's talk more about standing. Okay, so the standing is on a requirement for the Kohanim. The congregation technically could be sitting, as long as they're facing each other. However, our custom is to stand. And that seems to be implied by a statement made by the Meiri, and he makes that in a couple of places. It also seems to be implied by another book of halacha called the Eshkol, in the laws of Berachas Kohanim. And he said that everyone should really stand with their faces towards the blessers, the Kohanim, and they should have some fear and honor. And the Kohen who is not feeling up to it and can't stand the whole time, and he has to lean on something to be up there, he shouldn't be up there raising his hands. Because in this case, we're going to be strict and say it's like sitting down. Talk to Machlokes if leaning is standing or sitting. So in this case, we're going to be stringent. Okay? Okay, so we say you also have to hold your hands up. Okay, duh. But the Mishnah explains, so someone whose hands are shaky and he can't keep them up, he shouldn't do this he shouldn't do the Siyas Kapayim at all. And even if he went and did it, it's no good. All right, so his hands will be up there. And even if you keep them leaning on something, or they're tied together to his hat, okay, and you put your arms on this hat rest, okay, that they should be lifted up. That doesn't count because that's still having them lean on something. And you have to hold them up under your own power. Okay, and that's quoting the Noda of Yehuda, and it's also brought in the Shari Tshuva, so there's a lot of people who support this. However, if you can hold them up for a little bit, if you can keep them up while you're saying the words, Yivarecha, right, and then put them down, okay, while they're doing the that you could do, and then lift them up to say the last word, okay, as long as they're up when you're saying the words. Also, we said out loud, so that's to say, Not that you have to be screaming it, but you have to say it in a normal voice, which is to exclude saying it quietly. Nonetheless, it needs to be in a loud enough voice so that way the people who are there's a lot of people and they should hear, okay? And that seems to be implied by some language in some of the Midrashim. So somebody whose voice is a little bit funny, okay? So he kind of speaks like this, I guess, raspy voice. So that guy shouldn't get up to do the Siyas Kapayim. All right? So if he's doing his Marlon Brando imitation, don't have him do the Siyas Kapayim. Okay. Let's do 15 and we'll stop. We'll pause here. Okay, so after they finish saying these blessings, the Shliach Tzibor then recites Sim Shalom, and the Kohanim turn their faces back towards the Aron, and they say a prayer that starts with Ribon HaOlamim. Okay, and what does it say? Ribon HaOlamim, Master of the Universe, you have done for us what was enacted upon us. So please, you do for us what you had promised us as well. Please look down from your highest holy place, from heaven, and bless your entire nation of Israel. And the Ramah adds, and you should lengthen out this prayer until the Shliach Tzibor himself finishes the prayer of Sim Shalom. And then afterwards you say Amen with the congregation for both blessings. And if you can't stretch it out that long, then you should add the words Adir B'Marom and so on. That's in the Siddur. And that's explained later on in Siman 130. Okay. So in the Mishnah explains over here, you say this prayer of Ribon Kol Amim. And on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, where you have really, really long tunes, you have in the middle of that, you have Yom Ta'am Seinu. You shouldn't say it until after they finish Hayom Ta'am Seinu. Okay? That way you finish the blessing altogether. Okay, which that's a fun halacha to learn right before Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so there's a little prayer. Then some people have a long nigun. Right? We have another nigun for Yom Ta'am Seinu. Hayom Ta'am Seinu. It depends on where you go to. There's different tunes for it. Okay, so one of the parts of the prayer is what you have promised for us. So the Mishnah Berurah explains you should consent to the blessing that you have written to us, and I will bless you. Right, to the blessing that's of the Torah's Kohanim. And you need to say the Amen with the congregation. And the Mishnah Berurah explains that it makes sense to say the Kohanim need to answer Amen on the blessing for the Shliach Tzibor, not for theirs. So that's where they're adding Adir Marom, okay, and should therefore add or intend to add this prayer until you finish their prayer to say Amen with the Shliach Tzibor on the Shliach Tzibor's prayer. Okay, and so I think we will hold it there. We will pick up next year with some more rules about the Siyas Kapayim. I hope that was fun. You can go over some of these rules again. And I want you to have a good gebencht yog, and we will see you next year with more rules from Mishnah Berurah. So we're gonna move the Mishnah Berurah class around for the next few weeks while we bump into different Yamim Tovim. It's a little bit of a bridge today, but we've made some progress. So thank you everyone for those of you who came out, and thank you to those who watched this in replay. And we will see you next year.